Eh, estamos aquí.
Hello, Raf.
Yes, hi, how you doing? How you doing, Alberto?
Good to see you. Every time we try to look like, like we're coming fresh and we're seeing ourselves for the first time and we've not been preparing the whole morning, or well, the last hour for this. No, sounds like a fresh hello.
Hello. It is as if we haven't seen each other for many days, no, and that. Ay, Dios.
I've prepared properly today. I got a proper mood.
Well, that's the magic of cinematic. Our audience doesn't know what goes behind, no? The many hours and many nights not sleeping to get this ready. Anyway, salud, Alberto. Salud, everyone.
Viva Betty.
Viva Betty. Poor Betty. Welcome to Cinematic, our now legendary Sunday Bermuds program of short films that we are showing since Friday, which actually is probably one of the programs that has found better welcome now online, and certainly the networks, the social media, and people going through, watching it online is been superior, higher, no, than other programs, which is great. I'm very proud of seeing that.
It's really good because the program was more necessary even than previous ones. So was a particular necessary program, and because the films, I don't know, we always try to always say it's the best program or whatever, but it is a very strong program, and I'm assuming, Raf, when we host this Bermud, we've seen all the films and we assume that everyone has seen all at once on Friday, but probably most people are still halfway through or digesting, or they might have seen some of them. So we'll try to not do a lot of spoilers, but obviously this is the space where we will interview some of the directors and chat with you.
It's great to see that the interest and in a program called LATS, Toxic Masculinity, which is necessary, is actual, and is a lesson that I guess everybody has to take on changing some toxic behaviors that we kind of drag along from the Iron Age, and they don't belong to the 21st century.
Yep. It's one of those, Raf, that it's been brewing for a long time. We started seeing 16 December and some of these films and realized that there was something going on, that directors wanted to unpack the monster, to dig in the monster that we men have inside, and try to change things, obviously.
Sure. Well, I can see Joe Zabatska waiting patiently.
We just today we're not alone. The more the merrier.
We are not alone. We are as usual, no? And it's a bit arrogant to say this, but we are spoiled for choice of company. Just to go over the basic very quickly, you are in a Bermuda by Cinematic. Cinematic is a platform set up over 10 years ago to promote Ibero-American independent cinema, and to do so in a socially conscious way. We fancy ourselves at going to change the world by provoking a conversation, by provoking a thought, by provoking the smallest change of mind that will snowball into a major change. So that's why we choose to show films that are difficult to watch, are really scratchy, and if you watch
depends of the month, no? Depends of the month.
If you watch this program, you will feel challenged, in particular the male part of the audience, which I'm glad to say that we have guys buying tickets to watch this program, which is really encouraging.
We said it in the intro. We're imperfect creatures. We try to focus our topic every month on a different issue, but we are not experts, and hence that's why we are so grateful for the help researching, preparing, planning this program, the how to communicate, how to transmit what we wanted to say, and to ultimately host this event in partnership with Zero Tolerance. So no further ado, let's welcome Jo, if she is in the background.
She is.
Bring it to the fore.
Trying to do a couple of things at the same time. So hello. Yes. Hi.
Hello, everyone. Hi.
Hi, Jo.
Great. It works. Hi, Jo.
Welcome. Hi. Welcome, everyone. So I would like to start by saying that it is great to be here, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to collaborate with you on this project. I think that the selection of movies is absolutely fantastic, and I'm very happy to see that not only women's organizations are taking up this discussion, and gender inequality and violence against women is being seen as a wider social issue. Finally, it's not only women's issue, it's everybody's issue. I work for Zero Tolerance. We are a Scottish charity. We are a national campaigning organisation, and we work to prevent all forms of violence against women and girls. And we do this by challenging social attitudes that normalise violence and abuse. And toxic masculinity is something that we very often talk about in our campaigns, in our policy work. And this is one of the harmful social norms that we really want to tackle. So this event is a great platform to talk about the problem, but also talk about the solution, because we're all about the solutions here. So I would like to start by saying that collectively, we as a society are thought to have less value in women. We view them as property, as objects to men. A large majority of men operate on the foundation of this whole collective of socialization. So good men, which are in the majority, see themselves a little bit separate from the whole issue of violence against women, because they think, oh, I'm not one of them. So I'm the good one, so this is not something that relates to me. But in reality, all men are very much part of the problem, and they are very much part of the solution. So we all need to realize that less value, property, and objectification is the foundation of this collective socialization, and that the violence can't happen without it. So this whole social norms have impact of levels of violence against women.
Well,
yeah.
to say to that, it's a privilege for us to be part of you, and we are so happy and grateful actually for all the support and understanding of what we thought was going to be quite a polemic program to offer.
Yeah, well, when I was approached by Alberto, I was on my annual leave, and he phoned me. He's like, "How about a partnership?" And I was like, then immediately I was like, "I'll volunteer. I'll I'll collaborate with you on that," because I think that's just vital that we're having these conversations, and the film plays a huge part of it, because it's not only our social attitudes, it's the culture that we live in that shapes these social attitudes. And we need to tackle gender inequality, and we need to tackle these social attitudes at many different levels. So festivals like Cinematic are very much part of that discussion. I wanted to also say to make sure that I convey the message that violence against women is at epidemic proportions. It's a number one health concern in the UK and abroad. Some people think that we all have it, that feminism sorted so many women's issues, but in fact, 1 in 10 women in Scotland have experienced rape. 1 in 5 women in Scotland has had someone try to make them have sex against their will. And that is just 2 forms of violence that women and girls face. And there are many more other forms of violence that are unseen and that we don't talk about, and that Zero Tolerance wants to bring to public's attention. So we are trying to raise awareness between all the different forms of violence against women, and our work is to ask everyone to tackle the root cause gender inequality, because these forms of violence don't exist in a vacuum. As I said, they exist in this kind of collective, kind of social consciousness and behaviors and culture. There is a very interesting statistic, very recent statistic by Social Norms Index. There was a study conducted in 75 countries, covering over 80% of world's population. And 90% of people, men and women, hold some biases against women. And these biases act as an invisible barriers to achieving equality. And this is when we need to kind of start thinking about prevention. We need to start thinking about the fact that the crimes are perpetrated by men. 4 out of 5 violent crimes are perpetrated by men. And these crimes affect women, but also men. So men are perpetrators of majority of crimes. So it starts very early on. It starts when we educate boys. We kind of still teach them to be strong, courageous, dominating. There's no pain, no emotions, with the exception of anger and fear. But there's no fear. Men shouldn't be fearful, and this is where all these attitudes in men start. Men are also thought to be in charge, which means that women are not. Then men have to lead and women have to follow, and so on and so on. So from the very early on, men learn that women are less of value, and that men are objects, particularly sexual objects, and this is what we call the men box. And this is what we kind of see a lot in these shorts as well, that men and boys are captured in these toxic masculinity situations where they are expected to dominate, to be violent. There's one example that I wanted to give you, which was discussed in Tony Porter's talk. It was a 12-year-old football player, and he was asked about how he would feel in front of all the players and the coach if he was told that he plays like a girl. And the expectation was that he's going to say, "Oh, I'm just angry," or something like that. But he said that that it would destroy him. So if boys think that behaving like a girl would destroy them, we need to think about what messages are there in our culture about and education about girls. Well, I've got much. I feel I've taken a lot of space, so I'll stop here.
The space
no, Joe, no, absolutely, and it's a perfect context. I think we could unpin film to film, but we will spend the whole day. But we try to convey that in the program. We try to bring a lot of perspectives on becoming a man, on young experiences, on boys becoming teens becoming adults, and those little moments of daily life when our gaze is shaped, our attitudes. And just had a question that is about what you were saying about the core of what zero tolerance does, which is sometimes we see exactly that we're doing some feminism is making some small victories on labor conditions, on we can vote, laws, policies, but it's in the social norm, in the attitudes, where it feels like a cultural battle is now, and it's harder to battle to fight, in the sense of it's like a ghost. It's hard to see it, it's hard to spot it, but it's there. It's in our culture. It's we and we grow with that. But it feels like the battle for gender equality is now more on. I mean, it's in many aspects at the same time, in many fronts. But this program was particularly focused on trying to see that cultural element of social attitudes.
Yes, indeed, and so there is a truth in saying that gender inequality and violence against women is much more visible than it used to be. We talk about it more, and this is especially kind of over the past few weeks. Certain rapes and murders captured media's attention, but women and girls' experience of harassment and sexism is happening every day. So we hear in the media about some kind of more relatable cases, but we don't hear in the media about violence, about different forms of violence against women. I think we need to kind of put that in a kind of context and in the perspective of statistics, in terms of, you know, how many women we have in power, how many women are councillors. In Scotland, it's only 35%, which is quite a big achievement for Scotland. But we still only have 25% of women local councillors, and in terms of women being chief executives of public bodies, it's even less. It's 28%. 0% of women are major newspaper editors. So that tells us a little bit about, you know, who owns the narrative here. Like who, and the same for film producers, the same for people who have a voice. Like this representation is still very much unequal, and the fact that we hear about it more is very positive, but there is still a lot that needs to change. And as you said, you know, how to do it in our daily lives. We all kind of know that gender inequality exists, but for example, when we buy presents for children for Christmas or birthdays, we still divide them into two fixed genders. So you know, we buy a truck for a boy and a doll for a girl. So kind of the change will start when we start to deconstruct what our social norms. So kind of deconstruct this manhood. So would you buy? So when you, for example, buy presents for children, ask yourself a question: would you buy the same present if the child was a girl? So through what we consume, the movies we watch, the papers we read, the books we read, who we vote for as well, these are kind of small things that we can start with, this will give more power to women who are still underrepresented in so many different areas. So I think, again, there's this imbalance of opinion that we think that we already achieved a lot, but there's still a lot that needs to be done. And I think every one of us can do something, even if it's a small thing, and even if it's about starting questioning what is normal for women and men, what is normal for boys and girls. And and what follows is like, who holds that power? Like, who has the voice in every particular situation? And referring back to the shorts, I think each and every one of them could be used to talk about different social attitudes and different issues. So it's kind of, there's so much in them. They were very good at capturing this invisible things, that the things that we normalized so much that we don't think about. The issues around consent, the issues around boys behaving badly, the power and dominance as well. And they all have the common theme, which is not all of them, but most of them have the common theme of toxic masculinity, of this broad range of behaviors that are limiting boys. So when we talk about this, we cannot forget that this is hugely harmful for boys themselves. And I think when we deconstruct manhood and allow boys to just be themselves without the limitation of that man box that I mentioned earlier, it will liberate them, and that liberation is tied to women's liberation as well, because we will have less violence, we will have less gender norms that are continually imposed on us, and we're just gonna thrive, and we're gonna have healthier, happier society with better relationships and better outcomes for everyone.
Absolutely right. When you were describing the situation, the inequality on the workforce, the scary fact that there's no female director of any major newspaper, I remember Alberto and I with Cinematic started years ago dedicating a month at the female gaze. We set up a round table to chat with female directors, producers from Spain, from Scotland. And there was a huge gap. No, we discovered the cinema schools have 70% of female students, but something happened, and the productions of the year had less than 20% of films signed in an important role, director, producer, something like that, by a woman. And we were talking, was the issues. No, we were discussing why this is happening. There were so many. And one of them was obviously that the cinema has portrayed woman as a object of decoration, almost as a prize to win, the traditional way, and that the production, the money to make the films, is an expensive form of art, was still in the hands of a boys' club. That so having a female running a project that will cost several $1 million. A bigger risk than if you put a male. No, the cinema probably is the industry that has moved forward, not as far as we all wanted, but has moved forward the fastest. We are seeing a new generation of female directors. Well, it's also fair to say that women not always do what they say they are told to do, and there are important female directors, producers, photographers along the history of cinema. But right now, there are so many female directors coming out with important pieces of cinema coming out. And then the question I wanted to ask to you is how important is this, and how important is this female gaze in the mass consuming product as is films and TV series?
I think it's crucial. I mean, and you can't expect the culture to change if the narrative is owned by just one group. And here we're talking about women, but I would also like to mention other groups, other kind of intersections that are underrepresented. So when we talk about equality, we can't forget about the voices of women who are Black, who are trans, who are disabled, the ones that we hear at least about, because there is something around, okay, we have more women's voices, but we still, there are still other kind of intersections to the whole kind of women experience that are not visible. So I think it is improving. I think we can see, even watching Netflix is talking about popular culture. There is more representation and there is more awareness. But when you mentioned the money, I think one of the interesting examples of that inequality is women in sport. So if you look how much women players are paid, if you look at American football or in Britain, or just generally women in sports, I see sports as a kind of, this is the same kind of analogy, works for every other area of activity where women are involved. This disproportionate, the men's work is valued disproportionately more, and that really needs to change. So yeah, we can't. Yeah, as I said, we can't expect to achieve full equality if only half of the world's population owns the narrative and dictates that narrative as well.
All the work done before Friday, before today, and after has been crucial. To do this right.
Not at all. Again, I'm very grateful to be invited to be part of this event, and thank you for picking up something that is very complex, very incredibly difficult to tackle. And again, I hope the selection of shorts in this series will create will inspire some conversations and and will help us, step by step, little by little, to unpack and challenge toxic masculinity. And it will definitely contribute to solving this massive, complex social problem.
Hi, can you guys?
Yes.
Hola, Arantxa.
I can see you.
Welcome.
Hola. It was so great to spend the Sunday morning listening to you guys. The talk was super interesting and super necessary. So yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Arantxa. We'll get to the questions in a minute, but
Arantxa, getting into your amazing film, that really, I don't know from where to start. I would say, but it's not a question, it feels so the film that some British filmmakers should have made. And I don't know why it has to be actually some foreign filmmaker. But the first question is, how do you get inside this community, this neighborhood, and to be able to shoot your film in such a close range? You are inside the conversation there.
Yeah, to be honest, it wasn't, everyone asks the same, but it wasn't that hard. It was actually quite organic or something. I actually went there to make a different film, and as documentary happens, everything, guided me in a different direction, so that didn't happen. But I went there to make a film with a community center called, a group called Build a Girl, which is exactly for that, like to build self-esteem in young girls who are also at risk of being exploited or ending up in some sort of exploitation situation. So then I had that access, and then I started just meeting everyone, and everyone was actually really, curious to talk to me and to be kind of like, what are you doing here? And also, wanting to tell their stories or what they do there, or to show me around. I don't know. It was sort of easy and really interesting and entertaining. And I guess just being a foreigner, it's an advantage in that you always see things that locals don't see,
And they treat you different as well, don't they? They welcome you in a different way.
I can't judge them because I don't know the narrative. I like many times when people were like, "Oh, I can't believe you're filming that," and I didn't really understand it. I was kind of like, why wouldn't I, or why wouldn't they allow me to film? So they can't judge me, and I can't judge them because no one knows where to, in which box to put each other. So yeah, that's easier, I guess.
You take advantage of that, foreign perspective of that vacuum, in a sense, or different perspective. Yes. Arantxa, obviously, for some films like we will welcome later Álvaro Gago, it's more obvious the question, but I'm very curious for some of the filmmakers who made films probably, maybe, I don't know, you tell me, without that layer of maybe denouncing toxic masculinity. How do you feel about your film being the opening, is the first film in the program for a program on toxic masculinity?
I think it's super interesting because obviously it is not, or the focus was not on that, but all the conversations with the cinematographer were about this all the time. Because obviously it was not the same talking to one person alone than to a group of guys. And it was not the same talking to girls than to guys. And it's because, it's like this societal pressure for men to be strong and to be tough and to do a lot of swear words and to flirt with girls and, and it was really interesting to talk to one guy separate. And it was like a really nice, interesting conversation. And a minute after, the two friends are coming and then they are hitting on me. And it's like, what? How did that happen? Like, so I think the whole conversation was about that. It was actually about toxic masculinity and how to break that. And and we also tried with girls. So there aren't many girls in that film. And it was really hard to film them because of that, again, because guys can shout and perform in front of the camera with their mates, but girls don't do that. You stay quiet and you stay at the back and blah, blah.
Okay, I noticed the absence of girls, and I think there's a scene at the beginning of the film that a girl comes in one more in the gun and she's chased away or something happened there.
It was one of the siblings of the sibling of the protagonist, and I was like, "Come on, don't run away, just stay with us." And she was like very shy and very like, "No, don't film me." And then she and I was like, "Okay, fine." And then she just crosses the camera and she says something like, because at that moment the boys were talking about all the shits they do and how they get into fights and things like that, and then she just crosses the camera and says, all this shit is done by boys, girls don't do that. And it was like, okay, thank you. At least, you know.
What is the response you got from this? I mean, the reaction of the public to such a strong film. I mean, it shows Britain in the way that probably our leaders don't want to show right now. Quite the opposite.
It hasn't screened that much in the UK. It only has screened in Leeds. It had a great run outside of England. Some people, because it was nominated for the Griersons, and then when I talked to the jury, they said that the images are very common to them. So I don't know if it has such a relevance to British people, or if it does the same. I'm not sure, to be honest. But outside of Britain, it did have a great reception, and I think everyone,
we're talking about Arantxa. Correct me.
Alberto and I always interrupt. So just the second thing. I mean, what you show in the film is not particular only to England or to Britain. Yeah. Madrid has those neighborhoods, Seville has those neighborhoods, and I'm sure all over the place, big cities and modern societies produce those ghettos, no?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, for sure. I think it did bring up those conversations of social class and sexism in all the Q&As that we've been in, actually, which I'm very happy about, that it can create that conversation. That's a great starting point.
No, I was going to say, Raf, that so good that you're touching on this element of the bubble, Arantxa, because it feels like that, and it was kind of the next question, is that idea of, I mean, cinema and representation and, you know, what roles. It feels like these kids have no other choice. They cannot see, a future prospect or a future, life alternative than, what they see in Holmwood,
Yeah, exactly. I think with the protagonist, I was talking about that, and he was saying like, that is the same everywhere. It's the same in China. It's the same in Spain. It's the same. It's just like, no, but it is not actually. Like, and the fact that you don't know that it's very limiting, because if you don't know what are the options, how can you change?
Yes, because in your footage from when they were building that, the proud working families, but it degenerates into something. I mean, we are talking about the social value of your film, but in the film sense of things, the huge paradox there is that protagonist going that I can beat a dragon.
Yeah.
And us, as spectators, looking at him and say, well, I wonder if he will make it into adulthood, and zero chances of winning in the way he wants to win. No,
exactly. Sorry.
No, sorry. It's just
I just wanted to say that I think the real hero is, I don't know, the dancer at the end, Sam.
Yes.
He's the absolute hero, because he lives in the same place, he has the same reference, he's also in that bubble, and he could not care less about that. He also has a great family that supports him in whatever he does, but when I approached, so I saw a little boy coming out of a car dressed up in ballet clothes, and I was kind of like, okay, that's really weird, and I went to talk to him, and he was very sweet, like, yeah, I love ballet, and I was like, okay. And I wanted to ask him to dance for us, but I didn't at first, because I thought, I don't know, maybe he was going to get bullied or something. And then he came to me, kind of like, I can dance for you. And it's like, really? Are you sure this is okay? And he just doesn't, I don't know. I think it's really fascinating that he doesn't copy that. So, yeah.
In a way, the question, or when we were talking about the bubble and about the reference and the role models, is like how you break with that. What element is education, is culture. I mean, obviously that character links us to a classic.
The fact that his mom just supports him in whatever he does, it's key, and that whenever, of course, when other boys would bully him, she is always there being kind of like, it's good, we're good, don't worry, Bella. So yeah, and culture definitely, because it just gives you that, those options, no?
The dancer, is his dream. Is that the dream that he can actually dance, whether he's dancing well or not? qualified to judge it. But I love his illusion, his
Yeah.
will to do better, to do different, to be above all the shit that surrounds him, you know.
Yeah, no, he has made it. Like I think he's in boarding school in the Royal College of
Yeah.
Dance or something like that. Yeah, he got accepted.
That's great news, man.
It's a film that we've been waiting to have the chance to show for a long while. I think it was in the Clermont-Ferrand 2019, so it's been.
Yeah,
You know,
was it?
no?
No, it was the last
2020.
one I did just before COVID. Yeah. So,
2020, sorry. It's been a while, but we've been, kind of waiting for the occasion to show it, because we really loved it when we saw it. So, glad that, with a little bit of delay, or, according to the industry or the market rhythm, we could show it. And I think it's the perfect introduction to the program, really.
Great.
To what we're gonna.
I look forward to watching the rest of the program and to listening to the rest of the directors. And thank you so much for doing this. I think it's great, and it's been a pleasure.
Very challenging. Each film is a lens, a different angle on this toxic masculinity issue that we want to provoke, to remove, to change. And this one, the City of Children from Arantxa, is such a beautiful film with so many angles. Those characters, when you get a documentary where the characters are so strong, what can go wrong? You know what I mean? And she goes all the way to the end. How long it is? It's 15, 19 minutes, something like that. And surpass. But then we have a much shorter short coming up now. And I can see Alvaro in the waiting room. So let's get it in.
Please, it's one of our favorites. It's one of the very few directors that is for second time in the Vermouth. One of the very few.
Alvaro, yes.
Hi there. Hi,
Hola,
guys.
Alvaro. In your case, welcome back.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
No, yes,
Always a
it's
pleasure to talk to you guys.
it's always great to see you and great to see your films, man. And we were, I don't know, you were hearing what we were saying.
I was, yes.
The different lens, a different angle on the subject. No, I'm very proud of this program and how it works. And your film, no, 16 December, is probably one of the films that go really more graphically into the issue, no, as in actually representing an act of rape, an act of violence. And I think Alberto was going to ask you this question, and I was going to ask you the next one, but I got carried away. So Alberto,
Go ahead. I'm expecting it.
you know where you come in. It's the circus. We improvise. And no, in a way, sorry, Raf, to take where you were heading to. It's true. We saw about 18 months ago. I don't know when it premiered in Locarno. We could see 16 de December or 16th of December, and it was somehow the seed. And then the program started to build around, the need of talking about this topic. From more straightforward portrait of the topic, as in your case, to nuances and different perspectives on how childhood, on how men become men. But in your case, Alvaro, we're gonna ask this question to every filmmaker today. But how do you feel about having your film framed in a program like Toxic Masculinity?
Well, first off, just let me thank you guys for doing this. It's great. It answers a need that you guys have to talk about this, just in the same way that we have a need to translate out of our rage and disappointment and more rage into images and into something that hopefully will be positive for a lot of people. I was, well, to be honest, this film answered certain needs that I had at the time, and I framed them and I still have them, obviously, but I framed them in a way, so I translate those needs into images that not necessarily correspond with the kind of thought process that I am undergoing 2 years later. That to say that maybe since I'm usually thinking about how how effective a film can be, aside from the emotional part of it. I don't know whether I wouldn't make the same film nowadays. I think, or I like to think, that I've also learned a few things by doing it, and probably I would do certain things differently. In any case, the seed of it all responded to. So if you listen to my song, by the way, it's just playing around. I'm sorry, but it's Sunday and it's raining.
Say
here
hi.
in Galicia. Okay, I'll say hi. But it responded to the question of, are we doing enough as men, or what are we actually doing, if anything? And that question was framed after I exposed myself to A Weekend, and that's where the title derives from. A Weekend that it was actually no special. I mean, it wasn't special at all, because rapes and all kinds of aggressions are happening every day. But it really impacted me, and I can tell you why later on. But so those questions derive from experiences that are not mine. They're other people's experiences, very bad ones, but they were framed as in a reflective way, and inwardly. So I was thinking about us men, not them women. So it was great when I saw the film framed in this program, just to see it related to the kind of thought line that I was that I had at the time. And mostly, I was hoping that it was about them, the three guys in the car, and not anything to do with her. I mean, at least the conversation that was more focused on why that happened, and on the violence stuff. So it was great to see it there.
Yes, but I mean, going on that, on where the lens is placed, no, the act of the rape in the film is very short, but that is a contrast, no, obviously, with the lifelong impact it's going to have on the victim, and also is shot from the inside of the car. So it puts me as a viewer in a difficult position, really. As a director, how do you get to that decision of really making us all feel accomplices of this assault?
Right. Well, in all honesty, that was, like, let's say, an anchor as far as the how I was thinking the film visually, how I was just seeing it passing through in my head. So that was one shot that I had clear from the very beginning. Usually, I don't know, many people work in all kinds of different ways. What happens to me is that there's kind of like a few shots there, just out of an impulse, and probably out of just intuition, just come to mind, and I do try to then organize or structure the scene around them. This was one of them, and I didn't intellectualize it at first. I just, for some reason, it just felt right. There was something about not seeing them, seeing their backs, that kept me thinking about one sentence that I read in a book by André Bazin, and the sentence was to try to capture the feel of threat, but not the shark. And there was also something about them being present and having them as a presence, but obscure them or hide them in different ways. Sometimes out of the screen, sometimes not showing their faces, that attracted me, because I wanted to have that threat constantly oppressing and tensioning the image and the screen. And then as I moved forward and start talking about it, I realized that it was doing a couple of things, so 3 things for me. One, it was letting me the opportunity to play a bit selfishly with the mystery and the possible surprise, 2 elements that are very cinematographic. So it was just selfish pleasure. And then most importantly, it was putting the audience in the, you know, in their point of view, and kind of like creating a claustrophobic space from which they wouldn't be able to actually get out of in the first place, in the first part of the shot. So, you know, this is what happens. This is what happens every day, and you're gonna live it, and you're gonna live it real time, and you're gonna be with them, and you're gonna realize that actually this kind of banal conversations that we sometimes have, that most of the time are just put away as, oh, you know, they're just conversations, you know, nothing is going to come out of it, nothing's going to happen. No, but this kind of things is actually the kind of conversations that we need to address. And as we see in the film, stuff happens. So when and so, you know, for the audience to experience that real time, it was important. And then also, if you allow me, because I don't know, I feel like I'm talking a lot, but once
Go ahead,
okay, once we get to the to the moment where the car stops and they open the doors and they go and get her, you were placed in a position that then I understood as the same position that you are when you open your newspaper every day and you see another piece of news of someone, a woman being raped or a woman being whatever. Because you're reading those news from the comfort of your chair and you just flip through the page. So I kind of like thought, oh, if I can get a bit of that feeling by keeping you in the car in the comfort of your seat and you're seeing everything from a distance, just like, you know, something that could happen daily, and you know, you just experience that, and if I could connect those, if I could have some of that, even feelings that I have when I do that, because I read that constantly, whether online, whether on paper newspapers, and sometimes I do realize I'm conscious of the quantity, but sometimes you just flip through the page. So I don't know, I was trying to get as close to that feeling as possible with that resolution of the shot. And
the film certainly achieves that, and also it's a reflection that the whole program is working on, that it's not a matter of nasty people, criminals doing this. Absolutely, there's something happening on many men that all of a sudden change from being a perfectly normal person, family person, everything, into committing one of these rapes or assaults or acts of violence. No? And yes, Albert, I know you wanted to say something, but it's the fact that it's so short when it happens, but the impact is going to be probably lifelong on the victim's side. But also, one of the guys is filming it. It's kind of keeping a trophy of the achievement, no? And I thought, gosh, what a slap on your face for being a man. That
I'm always thinking of the political impact of my work, but I do think that I need to be emotionally connected to the material and for it to come to me naturally. That's what I mean. 16 December, I was shooting Matria, and I shot just one shot of one of the young ladies working at the canning factory, not being able to put the mussels in the cans in a very sort of orthodox way, and I felt I kind of like I felt attracted to that face, to her face, and I even during the shooting I told her I want to do something with you afterwards, and then in the end it didn't work because she works as a dentist and she couldn't cope with both jobs at the same time, and then so that was one of the first impulses. And then on the 16th and 17th of December, I was exposed a woman who worked here in a cafe in Santiago de Compostela was killed, and it wasn't my friend, but I was going fairly often to that coffee place to write, and we knew each other. And the day before, on the 16th, there was a girl killed in Vigo, Ana Maria Enjamio, who had who studied with friends of mine, and I didn't know her personally, but still, they were all indirect relations that I had with them. And also, I was exposed to a very tough video of a woman telling about her experience in Barcelona, a story about her going in plain sight and daylight walking around one of the main plazas in Barcelona and having a very violent encounter with a group of people. And all of that combined that weekend, even though, as I said before, it happens constantly and daily, and it's sadly nothing special. It just prompted me as well to try to do something about it. And so I started talking to a lot of women. I actually discovered that within my closer circle, there were a lot of stories that I didn't know of, and I started feeding from all of that. And then I met the main actress, and she was like the last impulse that made me think, okay, maybe we can do something here, because she was so confident and outspoken, and she responded also to this idea that I had of having someone who is not the stereotypical woman who would you probably think that something of that sort would happen, in order to address the fact that this can happen to everyone in every way, in every city, all around. So yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how that film is not compulsory viewing in every school in this planet, because it's an amazing piece of cinema, and it's a huge, strong story.
Well, I'm going. I always do this thing where I take the film to a lot of schools, high schools. In the case of 16th of December, it has to be high schools after the festival circuit or during the festival circuit. So it's being watched by a lot of guys. And actually, something very curious that I'm finding out as I'm doing this is that if the three guys that are if one of the three guys that play the three guys in the film are part of the Q&A afterwards, and it's them who have undergone their own processes while making the film, and if it's them who talk to the guys, then they listen a lot more.
Wow.
So it's good to have them in Scotland. That would be great.
No,
When we're allowed.
It's our intention to go. No further ado, we are going to welcome Martina Marcin, the director of El Nombre del Hijo, and our regular Fiona Bailey, the interpreter.
Thanks so much for joining us. And I will start. We've been talking all the time about girls and boys, men and women, female bodies, male bodies. But we were touching with Joe in the beginning, in the introduction, about all the things that we are forgetting in between, about, debunking this idea, this binary idea. And for us, it was very important to include your film in this program. But in the case of the previous directors, maybe it was more obvious. In your case, maybe you might be wondering, what is my film doing in a program about toxic masculinity? And that's my first question, Martina. How do you feel about your film being in this program that touches on masculinity, on dealing with male body and malehood?
Me pareció muy interesante y pensé por qué estaba el cortometraje en este programa, y hay algo que me parece muy interesante en relación a las masculinidades trans, sobre todo tan jóvenes, que es que su construcción de masculinidad no se da desde la niñez, si bien todos aprendemos qué se supone que debe ser una mujer y qué se supone que debe ser un hombre según nuestra sociedad. En el caso de las masculinidades trans, no han sido socializados como hombres. Entonces, es un aprendizaje que se da por otro lado y es una masculinidad que se construye desde otro lado.
That is certainly a very interesting angle. Your film relies heavily on the main character, no, Tristan Miranda. And I would like to ask you how you get to meet this boy, and how to involve him in your film, how the whole idea gets together.
Hicimos un casting de varones trans o no binarios y fue un casting muy interesante porque pudimos conversar con muchos chicos y realmente fue muy emocionante y aprendimos mucho. Pero entre todos estos chicos estaba Tristán, que nos cautivó con su sensibilidad y su inteligencia. Es muy distinto que el personaje principal, pero nos pareció ideal para interpretarlo.
Drama that ends up with that sea, that ocean, that is, it feels, like there's this expression in Spanish, no? When you say, estoy hecho un mar de dudas, no? And I was watching the scene and I was just thinking on that expression and on that big, massive sea that people like Lucho have to fight, and many people have to go through, have to fight. And we thought it was a very interesting cinematographic use of the sea, of the water. I don't know if you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Me gusta, nunca había pensado en esa frase, pero sí, era la idea que siempre el mar estuviese allí porque estaban en una playa, pero que nunca se viera, nunca se sintiera y nunca se escuchara hasta finalmente llegar al final. Y sí, el mar significa muchas cosas, es ese mundo inmenso, gigante, que da un poco de miedo, es aquel lugar al que quizás las primeras veces en las que uno se mete es bueno ir de la mano de alguien. Es esa masa gigante que por un lado es transparente, pero por otra es oscura y no se sabe qué hay en el fondo. Creo que significa muchas cosas el mar. Y nada, me parece que podía ser fuerte esa presencia constante pero invisible y que al final apareciera en su enormidad.
Before we move to the next question, because some people might be watching us today and are halfway through the program or have seen a couple of them, but this idea of water and fluidity, this presence of water in the background or in the front is a sub-theme in the program that is very present. If you see Gang, Lockdown, Lonely Rivers, the changing rooms of L'Intrus or 16 Diciembre is something we wanted in the program a lot, and maybe it's the biggest emotional impact is in your film. It has a very, very powerful emotional value in the whole program, and the moment we wanted people to get to that point when they're watching the short films. Hopefully we managed to make people feel that. But yeah, go, Raf.
Well, just say what I was going to say. No. No, I was trying to just go a bit deeper on the ending of the film. And I know some people may come to watch it in the following days, but too bad. It's an amazing ending. That hug from the father. Alberto was talking about that before we started the broadcast today. It says more than 1,000 words, really. And I just wanted to ask you, how do you come up with that ending? What got you to there? Is that something that started the film? Some people start the film from the ending. No? They want to get there, but...
Fue una de las cosas que más trabajo llevó. En las distintas versiones de guiones hay un montón de conversaciones distintas. Hasta el día en que lo filmamos todavía había muchas conversaciones distintas y finalmente nos animamos como equipo a descartar todas esas palabras porque entendimos que iba a llegar más fuerte, como decís, sin ninguna palabra. Que si lo lográbamos, realmente todas esas palabras estaban de más, nos arriesgamos y creo que funcionó, creo que funciona ese abrazo.
And when you use it as a contrapunto, no? As a contrast with what's happening in the film, these miscommunications, these words that don't want to sound like what they sound, don't want to hurt like they hurt, but the whole slow burn family drama that you're building in small silences and words become even more powerful when you get to that hug. So really, really beautiful scene and ending, as Rafa was saying. It's telling us so much about the state, the mood of Lucho. I don't know if you could tell us more about this use of color and photography and working with Constanza.
Sí, yo también soy del club de fans de Constanza. Tuvimos la suerte de poder trabajar con ella. El uso del color. Sí, realmente era como si todo ese momento, esos primeros días de esas vacaciones fuesen uno de esos días nublados y oscuros y casi donde hay como cierta niebla, cierta nubosidad. Si bien no es que está fuera de foco, pero algo así, que quizás en Argentina no es tan común y esos días estamos todos como con un ánimo raro, como eso, como que hay algo que disipar. Ese era un poco el clima que queríamos lograr. Sí, fue súper interesante trabajarlo. Sí, es que la pandemia nos permite seguir filmando, que en este momento es difícil porque está, empezando el frío aquí. Estamos por filmando un documental y desarrollando otro. De hecho, el segundo documental que estamos desarrollando es con Tristán también.
Ah, bravo.
Así que, esperamos poder seguir avanzando, pero sí, ahora en este momento está difícil filmar.
Obviously, for a filmmaker that wins, a Crystal Bear in Berlinale, everyone, not just us, will be looking at. But just let you know, you have. I mean, Constanza has, but you have now a small club of fans here in Scotland, and we are watching what's coming next from Martina.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for being with us, Martina, and such an early Sunday start. So we really appreciate your time and thank you for the film. It's fabulous.
Muchísimas gracias por esta invitación. Estamos muy, muy contentos de formar parte del programa y de haber venido hoy a conversar.
We need to say bye-bye, and this is not under 2 hours. Under 2 hours is 90 minutes, something like that. Anyway, I hope you enjoy it. I hope you appreciate with the quality of the things that our guests are saying and the privileged view of their work, of the process, of the way they come up with these films. I I'm so happy with all the things relating to this program. I mean, it's going so
Yeah.
well. It's really been accepted. It's
even Raf, absolutely. Even when we were talking with Alvaro, even if some films are hard to watch, the whole idea is that, I mean, what we're trying to say, you know, is that all these silly games between children in City of Children or in Gunst und Bafandru, no, Ráfagas de la Vida Salvaje, or in some of those films, somehow are connected to acts like the ones you see in Gang or in 16th of December. And, you know, we're trying to offer really from disgusting, pathetic, empathetic, very human perspectives and approach, you know, human beings, you know, men and men faces and men bodies and psychologies from very different points of view, and hopefully feels like that.
Yes, it does. I think it's a most needed conversation. We touch on that along the program. It's not easy viewing, and I think male viewers will find it. It's a mix of shame and difficulty actually to see what's going on there, but most needed. I'm very glad to see the acceptance and the number of people who are going through the program. So
may I finish, Raf, with a couple of tips? I forgot with Joe, we couldn't touch on it, but obviously, if I mean, we have zero tolerance. There are a wide range of feminist platforms, from Scottish Women's Aid to Engender, some focus on policy, but also there are some like Reclaim the Night or Reclaim the Streets that are men-led. I mean, those are not, but there are Reclaim the Streets groups by men. There are White Ribbon groups in England, in Scotland, and Men Against Violence groups that you can log in and be active in your daily lives in Facebook or in Twitter or whatever you do, or just be an active member of those. One of the initial seeds of the program that I think is an interesting reading when we were talking about books, and it's a classic, is I mean, it's a modern classic, is The Descent of a Man, that was very useful when thinking about this program and what films. The Descent of Man by Grayson Perry, but many others. I mean, there are many ways. Always the problem I have with this is if we are only showing up once a year to talk about this and then disappear, and it's hard to be activist all year round. But hopefully some of those things allow you to integrate it in your daily life.
Well, you said it all, and I completely agree with you. This is Cinematic. It's our monthly Sunday Bermud. Really busy for a sunny Sunday. Really interesting to talk to you, Alberto, to talk to all our guests.
To see you.
Oh, yes. And this month, we're talking about May already. You have a couple of things coming on. Well, you shall we say Iberodocs is coming at the end of April. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and thank you very much for joining us in our move, joining us in our online presence. June seems to be the month that we'll be back in our usual venues across Scotland. And I hope to see you. Well, we hope to see you there. In the meantime, keep safe, keep well, and watch cinema.
You should put, like, when the club finishes, I can see clearly now, like the ending song, no? Like the closing time song.
Post-punk thingy, but
I can see clearly now, the rain is gone.
Alberto, we talk about this.
Anyway, have a lovely Sunday and enjoy the films, guys.
Thank you very much.
Adiós, guapo.
See you too, guys. Cheers, Alberto.